Hello, my name is Jake. I'm 31 years old. I work as a carpenter, mostly custom cabinets and furniture restoration. And I share a cramped two-bedroom apartment with my roommate Chris just outside downtown. It's not much to look at from the outside. Red brick, fire escape zigzagging up the front. The kind of building where you can hear your neighbors arguing through the walls. But we've made it work for 3 years now. Chris throws parties. Not wild, destructive parties, but the kind where 15 people crowd into our living room, nursing beers and talking over whatever playlist he's assembled that week. I don't mind them. Usually I'll hang around for an hour or two, make conversation, then retreat to my room when the noise gets to be too much. It's become a routine we both understand. Last Saturday was different, though. Chris had invited the usual crowd, co-workers from the marketing firm where he works, a few college friends, some neighbors from down the hall. I'd spent the day finishing a dining table for a client, sanding and applying the final coat of stain, and my hands still smelled like wood polish when people started arriving. I remember noticing her right away. She was sitting on our second-hand couch, talking quietly with Lisa, one of Chris's coworkers, dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater that looked like it had been washed 100 times. There was something about the way she held herself, relaxed but attentive, like she was genuinely interested in whatever Lisa was saying. "That's Emma," Chris said when he caught me looking. "She works with Lisa. First time here." The name fit her somehow. I nodded and grabbed a beer from the kitchen, telling myself I'd introduce myself later when the conversation died down. But the evening moved in its usual rhythm, clusters of people forming and reforming, music shifting from indie rock to something more mellow, empty bottles accumulating on every surface. I found myself stealing glances at her throughout the night. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, but people seemed drawn to her. She'd laugh at someone's joke, then ask a follow-up question that made them light up. When Tom started telling a story about getting lost in Philadelphia for the third time this month, she listened like it was the first time she'd heard it. I was in the kitchen refilling the ice bucket when she appeared beside me, reaching for a glass of water. "You're Jake, right?" she said. "Chris mentioned you built that bookshelf." She nodded toward the living room, where my latest project stood against the far wall, floor-to-ceiling oak with adjustable shelves. "Guilty," I said, "though I'm pretty sure he's told that story to everyone who's walked through the door." She smiled. "He's proud of it. Said you made it from reclaimed wood." "Barnwood from upstate. The client wanted something with character." I paused, realizing how that might sound. Not that new wood doesn't have character. It's just different. "No, I get it. There's history in old wood. Stories." The way she said it made me look at her more carefully. Most people nod politely when I talk about my work, but she seemed genuinely interested. "What kind of stories do you think it tells?" I asked. She considered this, running her finger along the rim of her glass. "Weather stories, probably. Seasons of rain and snow and sun. Maybe some human stories, too. The farmer who built the barn, the animals that lived there, the day someone decided it had served its purpose." I felt something shift in my chest. That's exactly what I think about when I'm working with it. We talked for maybe 10 more minutes about wood and craftsmanship, about the satisfaction of making something with your hands. She told me she worked in graphic design but had always wanted to try woodworking. I found myself explaining the difference between hardwoods and softwoods, the way grain patterns can guide your cuts, the meditative quality of sanding. Then Lisa appeared, tugging Emma back toward the living room, where someone had started a heated debate about the best pizza in the city. Emma gave me an apologetic smile and let herself be led away. The party continued around us. Chris put on an old playlist from college, and suddenly everyone was singing along to songs from 10 years ago. I participated in the usual way. A comment here, a laugh there, but I kept finding myself watching Emma. She knew some of the songs too, I noticed. She'd mouth the words to the chorus of Something by the Strokes, then catch herself and smile like she was embarrassed to be caught. If you've ever felt pulled towards someone you've just met, that inexplicable sense of recognition, give this story some hype. Sometimes we need to know we're not alone in feeling these unexpected connections. People were starting to leave, the usual exodus, jackets retrieved from the pile on Chris's bed, promises to hang out soon that may or may not materialize, the gradual thinning of voices until only the core group remained. Tom and Mike were debating whether to call it a night or head to the late-night diner on Fifth Street. Lisa was checking her phone, probably calling a rideshare. I was collecting empty bottles from the coffee table when I realized Emma was still there. She was sitting on the couch again, but now she had her shoes off, feet tucked under her. She wasn't checking her phone or looking restless like people do when they're ready to leave. She looked settled. "You don't have to help clean up," Chris said, appearing beside me with an armful of cups. "I'll get it tomorrow." "It's fine, gives me something to do with my hands." He grinned. "Always working, aren't you?" It was just the three of us now. Chris was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with the efficiency of someone who's hosted many parties. I was straightening the living room, pushing furniture back into place, folding the throw blanket that had somehow ended up on the floor. "I should probably head out," Emma said, but she made no move to get up. "No rush," Chris called from the kitchen. "Jake's a night owl anyway. He'll probably be up for another hour." This was true. I've always been someone who needs time to wind down after social interaction. Even social interaction I enjoy. I'll read for a while, or sometimes I'll go down to the basement where I keep my tools and work on small projects. Sanding a piece of trim, organizing hardware, anything that helps my mind settle. Chris emerged from the kitchen, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Actually, I'm beat. That client presentation is tomorrow, and I still need to review my notes." He looked at Emma. "You're welcome to stay as long as you want. Jake's good company." I felt a flutter of panic, not because I didn't want to be alone with Emma, but because I did. There's something vulnerable about being the last two people in a room, about the way conversation changes when the crowd disappears. "I don't want to impose," Emma said. "You're not imposing," I said, surprising myself with how quickly I responded. "I mean, if you want to stay, no pressure." Chris was already heading toward his bedroom. "There's more beer in the fridge if you want it, and Jake makes excellent coffee if you're switching to caffeine." Then he was gone, and we were alone. The apartment felt different without the background hum of multiple conversations. Quieter, obviously, but also more intimate. The lighting seemed softer, the space smaller. Emma was still on the couch, now with her legs stretched out, and I was standing by the bookshelf, suddenly unsure what to do with myself. "I've been waiting for the quiet," she said. The words hung in the air between us. Not awkward exactly, but loaded with something I couldn't quite identify. "The quiet?" I asked. She nodded. "Parties are fun, but they're exhausting too. All that performance, keeping track of conversations, making sure you're being interesting enough, likable enough." She paused. I kept hoping the noise would die down so we could actually talk. My heart did something complicated. "Talk about what?" "I don't know. Everything." "Nothing. The way you describe wood like it's alive. The fact that you notice things." "What things?" "Earlier, when Tom was telling his Philadelphia story, you were the only person who wasn't checking their phone. You were actually listening. And when Lisa spilled wine on her sleeve, you handed her the dish towel before she even asked." I hadn't realized she'd been watching me the way I'd been watching her. The thought made my face warm. "I just pay attention," I said. "Exactly." I moved to the armchair across from the couch, close enough to talk without raising our voices, but far enough to feel safe. "What about you? What do you notice?" She considered this. "I noticed that your bookshelf isn't just functional. The proportions are perfect for the wall, and you chose a stain that complements the hardwood floors. I noticed that all your books are arranged by height, not alphabetically, which means you care more about how they look together than finding them quickly." She was right. I'd spent an embarrassing amount of time arranging those books. "I noticed that you have 3 coffee mugs on the kitchen counter, but they're all different sizes and colors, which means you choose based on your mood, not convenience." This was getting uncomfortably accurate. "And I noticed that you've been fidgeting with that bottle cap, which means you're nervous." I looked down at my hands. Sure enough, I was rolling a Heineken cap between my fingers. "Busted," I said. "Why are you nervous?" The question was gentle, but it cut right to the heart of things. Why was I nervous? Because she was beautiful? Because she seemed genuinely interested in me? Because it had been months since I'd had a real conversation with someone I was attracted to? "I don't know," I said, which was both true and completely inadequate. She smiled. "That's okay, I'm nervous too." "You don't seem nervous." "I'm good at hiding it. Occupational hazard of client presentations and creative reviews. But my stomach's been doing flips since Chris went to bed." The admission made something in my chest loosen. So what do we do now? We could start with coffee. You promised excellent coffee. I stood up, grateful for something to do with my hands. Any preferences? I've got a French press, or I can make it in the machine. French press sounds perfect. In the kitchen, I went through the familiar ritual, grinding beans, heating water, measuring coffee. The mechanical actions helped calm my nerves, and the sound of the grinder covered the silence that might have become awkward. Emma appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "This is nice," she said. "The coffee, I haven't made it yet." "No, this. The quiet activity, the not having to fill every moment with words." I poured the hot water over the grounds, watching them bloom and release their aroma. I've always liked that about working with wood. Most of it happens in silence, just you and the material, figuring each other out. Is that how you think about it? Figuring each other out? Sort of. Every piece of wood has its own personality, the way the grain runs, where the knots are, how it responds to different tools. You have to pay attention, respect what it wants to be. And what if what it wants to be isn't what you planned? I thought about this as I pressed the plunger down slowly. Then you adapt. Some of my best pieces happen because I let the wood guide the design instead of forcing my original idea. She was quiet while I poured the coffee into 2 mugs. The blue one for me, the ceramic one with the chip on the handle for her. I'd chosen it without thinking, then realized it might seem presumptuous. "Sorry, I should have asked which mug you wanted." "This one's perfect," she said, wrapping her hands around it. "It has character." We settled back into the living room, her on the couch, me in the chair. The coffee was good, rich and smooth, with just enough bite to keep us alert. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It felt expectant, like we were both waiting for the right moment to say something important. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said finally. "Sure." "Earlier, when you were talking about reclaimed wood having stories, do you think people are like that too?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you think we carry the marks of everything that shaped us? The way old wood carries the marks of weather and time." I sipped my coffee, considering. "I think so, yeah, though I'm not sure if that's good or bad." "Why bad?" "Well, some marks are from damage, storms, neglect, poor treatment. With wood, you can sometimes sand those out, start fresh. With people," I shrugged. "With people, maybe the marks are part of what makes them beautiful." The way she said it made me look at her more carefully. There was something in her expression, a kind of vulnerability that hadn't been there during the party. "What marks are you carrying?" I asked. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. "The usual ones, I guess. Failed relationships, career disappointments, family expectations I never quite lived up to." She looked up at me. "What about you?" I felt the weight of the question. It's one thing to make small talk about wood and coffee. It's another to start excavating the deeper layers of yourself for someone you've known for a few hours. "I used to be married," I said, the words coming out before I could second guess them. Emma's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't look surprised. "Used to be?" "Divorced 2 years ago, Sarah. We were together for 6 years, married for 3. I set my mug down, suddenly needing something to do with my hands again. She wanted things I couldn't give her. Stability, I guess, a clearer plan for the future. "What kind of plan?" "Kids, a house in the suburbs, a husband who worked regular hours and brought home a predictable paycheck." I laughed, but it came out bitter. She wasn't wrong to want those things. I just wasn't the right person to give them to her. "Because you're a carpenter?" "Because I'm the kind of person who spends 3 weeks perfecting a single joint on a cabinet door because I'd rather make beautiful things than make money. Because I think there's value in taking time to do something right, even if it means turning down other jobs." Emma was listening with that same focused attention I'd noticed earlier. She didn't understand that. She understood it intellectually. She even said she admired it. But living with it was different. When I'd spend entire weekends in the basement workshop, or when I'd turn down a big commercial job because it felt soulless, or when I'd get so absorbed in a project that I'd forget we had dinner plans, I trailed off. I wasn't a very good husband. Or maybe you just weren't a good husband for her. The distinction hit me like a physical thing. Maybe what happened at the end. She met someone else. Another marketing guy, actually. Someone who understood her world, who wanted the same things she wanted. I picked up my coffee again, grateful for the warmth. The weird thing is, I wasn't even angry. I was sad, obviously, and hurt, but mostly I was relieved. We'd been trying to make it work for so long, and suddenly we didn't have to anymore. That doesn't sound weird. It sounds honest. We sat with that for a moment. Outside, a car drove by, its headlights sweeping across the wall before disappearing. The building settled around us with small creaks and sighs. "What about you?" I asked. "Any marriage scars?" She shook her head. "Close, though. 2 years ago, I was engaged to a guy named David, investment banker, very serious, very sure about everything. We had the venue booked, the invitations ordered, the whole production planned. What happened? I realized I was more excited about the wedding than the marriage, and that maybe I was trying to become the kind of person who would marry someone like David instead of figuring out who I actually was. So you called it off. 3 months before the wedding, it was," she paused, searching for the right word, "catastrophic. My parents were mortified. His parents threatened to sue us for the deposits. My friends didn't know what to say. But you did it anyway." "I did it anyway, and it was the right choice, even though it felt like the end of the world at the time." I found myself leaning forward. "What made you realize it was wrong?" "A lot of things, but the moment I knew for sure was when we were tasting cakes at this fancy bakery, and the baker asked what flavors we wanted. David immediately said, 'Vanilla with vanilla buttercream. Safe, traditional, what everyone expects.' And I heard myself agreeing, even though I hate vanilla cake. I've always hated vanilla cake." She laughed, but there was something painful in it. "That's when I realized I'd been agreeing to a lot of vanilla cake. The house he wanted in Westchester, the friends who were all couples just like us, the version of myself that would fit seamlessly into his life without causing any disruption." "What kind of cake do you actually like? Lemon with cream cheese, frosting, or chocolate with raspberry filling? Something with flavor, with personality." She met my eyes, "Something that might surprise you." The conversation was moving into territory that felt both dangerous and necessary. I could sense we were approaching something, not just attraction, but recognition. The kind of understanding that happens when two people realize they've been asking the same questions about their lives. "Can I tell you something?" Emma said. "Of course." When I first walked in tonight and saw that bookshelf, I thought about David. He would have hired someone to build it, but he would have specified exactly what he wanted: the dimensions, the wood type, the stain color. He would have managed the project like a business transaction. She paused, running her finger around the rim of her mug. "But when Chris told me you made it, I could see the difference. It wasn't just functional, it was thoughtful. You didn't just build a bookshelf, you created something that belonged in this specific space with these specific people. It's just a bookshelf." "No, it's not. It's evidence of how you move through the world, carefully, intentionally, with respect for the materials you're working with." I felt something open in my chest, a kind of recognition I hadn't experienced in a long time. "Is that why you stayed after everyone left?" She nodded. "I wanted to see if the person who built that bookshelf was as interesting as I hoped he'd be, and more interesting and more complicated." The admission hung between us, honest and vulnerable. I realized we'd been building something over the course of this conversation, not just attraction, but trust, the kind of foundation that real intimacy requires. "I'm glad you stayed," I said, "even though I'm making you nervous." "Especially because you're making me nervous. I haven't felt nervous about someone in a long time. I searched for the right word. It's promising." She smiled, and for the first time all evening, it reached her eyes completely. "Promising? How?" "It means I care what happens next." The coffee was cooling in our mugs, but neither of us seemed inclined to drink it. The conversation had shifted into something more intimate, more essential. I found myself studying her face in the soft light from the floor lamp, the way her eyes crinkled slightly when she smiled, the small scar near her left eyebrow that I hadn't noticed before. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Honestly, I'm thinking about how long it's been since I've had a conversation like this." "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where I forget to monitor what I'm saying, where I stop performing and just exist." She nodded slowly. "I know what you mean. Most of the time I feel like I'm playing a slightly better version of myself, more confident, more put together, more sure about everything. And right now I feel like myself, the real version, with all the uncertainty and contradiction that comes with it." I leaned back in the chair, letting myself relax for the first time all evening. "Tell me something true about yourself. something you don't usually share. She considered this, tilting her head slightly. I collect vintage postcards, not expensive ones or rare ones, just ordinary postcards from places I've never been. I buy them at flea markets and antique shops, and I imagine the people who sent them, what their lives were like, what made them choose that particular image to represent their experience. That's beautiful. It's weird. It's both. What's the most interesting one you've found? There's one from 1962, sent from Yellowstone to someone named Margaret in Ohio. The picture is of Old Faithful, but the message just says, "Wish you were here to see this with me. Some things are too big for words." It's signed R. Do you think R and Margaret were lovers? I think R was in love with Margaret, but I'm not sure Margaret knew it. There's something wistful about the handwriting, like the person was trying to say more than they could. I felt a chill of recognition. Maybe that's why you collect them. They're all love letters in a way. Maybe? She looked at me directly. Your turn. Tell me something true. I thought about deflecting, offering something safe and slightly revealing, but not too vulnerable. Instead, I found myself saying, sometimes I talk to the wood while I'm working on it. What do you say? I apologize when I make a mistake that damages it. I thank it when it gives me a particularly clean cut or reveals a beautiful grain pattern. I ask it what it wants to become. And does it answer? In its way, yeah. The wood tells you things if you pay attention, where it's strong, where it's weak, how it wants to be shaped. Emma was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. That's not weird at all. That's reverence. Most people would think it's crazy. Most people don't understand that everything has a spirit, but you do. The way she said it made something shift inside me. Not just attraction now, but recognition of something deeper. A shared understanding of how the world works, of the importance of paying attention to things that can't speak for themselves. Can I ask you something personal? I said. Haven't we been doing that for the last hour? More personal. She smiled. Go ahead. What are you looking for in general? I mean, what do you want your life to look like? She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before. I want to wake up in the morning and feel like I'm living my actual life, not some approximation of what I think my life should be. I want to do work that matters to me, even if it doesn't make sense to other people. I want to be with somebody who sees me clearly and likes what they see. She paused, then added, I want to stop being afraid of taking up space. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent so much of my life trying to be easy, trying not to be too much or too complicated or too demanding. But I'm starting to think, that being easy isn't the same as being happy. I understood this completely. After Sarah left, I went through this period where I tried to convince myself I should be more practical. I looked into getting a contractor's license, maybe starting a business doing kitchen renovations and bathroom remodels. Steady work, good money. What stopped you? I realized I'd rather be broke doing work I love than comfortable doing work that feels meaningless. Maybe that's selfish, but it's honest. It's not selfish, it's brave. Some days it feels brave, other days it feels stupid. What about today? I looked at her, sitting there with her feet tucked under her, completely present and engaged, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not just attraction, but possibility. Today it feels like the right choice. The clock on the kitchen wall chimed, startling us both. I was surprised by how quickly the time had passed, and also by how little I cared. I had nowhere to be tomorrow except my workshop, and even that could wait. Are you tired? I asked. Not even a little bit, are you? No. Good. She stretched, extending her arms above her head, and I caught a glimpse of skin where her sweater rode up. The gesture was unconscious, natural, but it reminded me that we were alone together in the quiet of my apartment, that there was an undercurrent of attraction running beneath all this conversation. Jake? Yeah? I need to tell you something. I almost didn't come tonight. Lisa had to practically drag me here. Why? Because I've been in a weird place lately. Since the engagement ended, I've been cautious, I guess, careful about getting involved with anyone, careful about trusting my instincts about people. She shifted on the couch, turning to face me more directly. But sitting here with you, I keep thinking about something my grandmother used to say. She said you can't live your whole life protecting yourself from getting hurt because protection and connection are opposites. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. She also said that when you meet someone who makes you want to be braver, you should pay attention to that feeling. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with implication. I felt my heart speed up. And do I make you want to be braver? Yes. The single word carried more weight than entire conversations I'd had with other people. I set my mug down on the coffee table and leaned forward. Emma. Yeah? I'm glad you stayed, even though it's complicated. Especially because it's complicated. She smiled, and I realized we'd crossed some invisible line. The conversation had moved from getting to know you territory into something more intimate, more charged with possibility. The space between us felt electric. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. What do you want to happen? Honestly, I want to keep talking. I want to learn more about you. I want to figure out if this feeling I have is real or just the result of too much coffee and not enough sleep. What feeling? Like I've been waiting for you specifically, even though I didn't know what I was waiting for. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot of tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. I know that feeling. Do you? Yeah, like recognition, like coming home to a place you've never been before. She nodded slowly, exactly like that. We looked at each other across the small space of the living room, and I felt the weight of possibility settling around us. Not pressure exactly, but awareness that we were at a moment that could change things. Can I sit with you? I asked. I was hoping you would. I moved from the chair to the couch, settling beside her, but not too close. Close enough to catch the scent of her shampoo, something clean and floral, but far enough to maintain the delicate balance we'd established. Better, she said. Yeah. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both of us adjusting to the new proximity. I could feel the warmth of her body next to mine, could see the rise and fall of her breathing. It was intimate without being overwhelming, charged without being urgent. Tell me about your work, I said. The graphic design. What do you want to know? What kind of projects do you take on? What makes you excited about a job? She tucked one leg under her, turning slightly to face me. I specialize in branding for small businesses, coffee shops, bookstores, local restaurants, places with personality that want their visual identity to reflect who they really are. That sounds like the visual equivalent of what I do with wood. How so? You're trying to find the essence of something and express it honestly. You're not imposing a generic solution. You're discovering what already exists and helping it become more itself. Her face lit up. That's exactly it. Most of my clients come to me because they've tried working with bigger agencies that want to make them look like everyone else. But I think the goal should be to make them look like the best version of themselves. What's your favorite project you've worked on? There's this little bakery in Brooklyn, Flour and Fancy. The owner, Mrs. Chen, has been baking the same recipes her grandmother taught her for 30 years. She came to me because her daughter convinced her she needed a website and business cards, but she was terrified of losing the neighborhood feel. Emma's eyes were bright as she talked, animated in a way I hadn't seen during the party. So instead of trying to modernize everything, I built a brand around the idea of tradition. Hand-lettered fonts, warm colors, imagery that felt like family photos. The logo is based on her actual handwriting. I had her write out the bakery name and I turned it into a digital font. Did it work? She cried when she saw the final designs, said it looked like her bakery felt, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. The best part is, business has tripled since we launched the new branding, but she hasn't lost any of her regular customers. She's just attracted new people who appreciate what she was already doing. I found myself leaning closer as she talked, drawn in by her passion for the work and the way she thought about it. That's beautiful. You're helping people tell their true stories. I try to. What about you? What's your favorite piece you've made? I thought about this. There's a rocking chair I built last year for a woman whose husband had just died. She wanted something she could sit in while she read his letters. His letters? He'd written her one letter for every year they were married, 43 letters, and hidden them around the house for her to find after he was gone. She'd been finding them slowly, one every few weeks, and she wanted a special place to read them. Emma's hand moved to her chest over her heart. Oh, she brought me a photo of a chair her grandfather had made, asked if I could build something similar. But when I looked at the photo, I realized it wasn't quite right. The proportions were off for someone her size, and the back was too straight for extended reading. So you adapted it. I kept the spirit of the original, the same joinery techniques, the same style of spindles, but I adjusted everything to fit her specifically. The seat depth, the angle of the back, even the height of the arms so she could rest her elbows comfortably while holding papers. How did she react when she saw it? She sat down in it immediately, pulled out one of the letters, and started reading. She didn't say anything for maybe 10 minutes, just sat there reading and rocking slightly. When she finally looked up, she said it felt like being held. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. You gave her a place to grieve. I gave her a place to remember. Same thing, maybe. I nodded. Maybe. We sat with that for a moment, both lost in our own thoughts. Outside, the city was settling into its late-night rhythm. The occasional car, the distant sound of a siren, the hum of the building's heating system cycling on. Jake? Yeah? I want to ask you something, but I'm afraid it might be too forward. Ask anyway. She turned to face me more fully, and I could see something shifting in her expression. Not uncertainty exactly, but a kind of gathering courage. Would you show me your workshop? Now, if that's okay, I know it's late, but I keep thinking about what you said earlier, about the meditative quality of working with wood. I'd like to see where that happens for you. I felt a flutter of nervousness. My workshop was a private space, the place where I went to think and create, an escape from the world. I'd never shown it to someone I just met, never brought anyone down there who wasn't a client picking up a finished piece. But looking at Emma, seeing the genuine curiosity in her eyes, I realized I wanted to share it with her. I wanted her to understand this part of my life that was so central to who I was. Okay, I said, but I should warn you, it's not fancy, just a basement workshop with decent lighting and too many tools. I don't need fancy, I need authentic. I led her down the narrow stairs to the basement, flicking on lights as we went. The workshop occupied half of the basement space. The other half was storage for the building, boxes and old furniture, and the mechanical systems that kept the place running. My area was organized chaos, workbenches along two walls, hand tools hung on pegboards, power tools on rolling carts that could be moved as needed. The air smelled like sawdust and linseed oil, with undertones of the various stains and finishes I used. It was a smell I'd grown to love, the olfactory signature of productive work. Oh, Emma said, stopping just inside the doorway. This is wonderful. She moved slowly through the space, taking in the details. The half-finished dining table on the main workbench, its surface sanded smooth and ready for stain. The collection of hand planes arranged by size on a shelf. The lumber rack along the back wall, holding boards in various stages of drying and preparation. You can touch things, I said. Nothing's too delicate. She ran her hand along the edge of the dining table, feeling the smoothness of the sanded surface. This is beautiful. What kind of wood? Cherry. It'll darken as it ages, develop this rich reddish-brown patina for a client. Yeah, a couple in Park Slope. They wanted something that would seat 8 but still feel intimate. She walked over to the lumber rack, studying the different boards. How do you choose which piece to use for what? It depends on the project. For something like a tabletop, you want boards that are stable, with grain that flows well together. For legs or structural elements, you need strength over beauty, though ideally you get both. I pulled out a piece of walnut, holding it up to the light. See how the grain curves here? This would be perfect for a chair back. It would bend naturally in the right direction. Emma took the board from me, running her fingers along the grain. It's like reading the wood's personality. Exactly. She handed the board back, and our fingers brushed as I took it from her. The contact was brief but electric, a reminder of the attraction that had been building between us all evening. What are you working on next? She asked. I gestured toward a stack of oak boards in the corner. Built-in bookcases for a home office. The client wants something that looks like it's always been part of the house, like your bookshelf upstairs, but bigger. Similar idea. Yeah, though this one's more complex. It has to work around existing electrical outlets and baseboards, and there's a window that complicates the design. She was quiet for a moment, studying the space. I can see why you love this. It's like a sanctuary. It is. When I'm down here working, everything else falls away. It's just me and the wood and the problem I'm trying to solve. Is that what you were doing when Sarah complained about you spending weekends down here? The question was gentle, but it hit close to home. Yeah, I'd come down here when we fought, or when I felt overwhelmed by everything she wanted from me. It was my escape. But it was also your work. It was both, which made it complicated. Emma nodded slowly. David used to say I spent too much time on personal projects, designs that weren't for paying clients, just things I wanted to explore. He couldn't understand why I'd work for free on something that might never lead anywhere. But those projects matter to you. They're where I figure out what I actually want to say, where I push myself to try new things without the pressure of client expectations. I understood this completely. I do the same thing, small pieces, experiments with new techniques or unusual wood combinations. They don't make money, but they make me better. Exactly. We stood in the quiet of the workshop, surrounded by the tools and materials of my trade. I realized this was the first time I'd brought someone down here who understood what it meant to me, who saw it as more than just a hobby or a way to make money. Thank you for showing me this, Emma said. Thank you for wanting to see it. She moved closer to where I was standing, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Jake. Yeah? I need to tell you something else. I haven't felt this connected to someone in a very long time. And it's scary because I know we just met, and I know this could all disappear tomorrow. But I also know that if I don't acknowledge what's happening here, I'll regret it. I felt something open in my chest, a space I hadn't realized had been closed. What do you think is happening here? I think we're recognizing each other. I think we're both people who've been trying to fit into lives that don't quite suit us. And maybe we're seeing the possibility of something different. She was right, and the recognition of it was both thrilling and terrifying. And Emma, yeah? I want to kiss you. She smiled, and it was like a sunrise. I was hoping you'd say that. I moved closer, close enough to touch her face, to feel the warmth of her skin. She leaned into my hand, and I felt the last of my reservations dissolve. Are you sure about this? I asked. I'm sure about you. When I kissed her, it was soft at first, tentative, a question more than a statement. But when she kissed me back, her hands coming up to rest on my chest, it became something deeper. Not desperate or urgent, but certain, like recognition made physical. We broke apart after a moment, both of us breathing harder than before. Wow, she said. Yeah. We stood there looking at each other, both of us slightly stunned by the intensity of the connection. I realized we'd crossed another line, moved from possibility into something more concrete. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. What do you want to happen? She considered this, her hand still resting on my chest. I want to go upstairs and keep talking. I want to learn everything about you. I want to see if this feeling survives the morning. And if it does, then we figure out what comes next. We made our way back upstairs, the dynamic between us subtly changed by what had happened in the workshop. Not awkward, but charged with new awareness. We'd acknowledged the attraction, acted on it, and now we were navigating the space that came after. More coffee? I asked as we reached the living room. Actually, I think I'm ready to switch to water. All that caffeine is catching up with me. I got us both glasses of water from the kitchen, grateful for a moment to collect my thoughts. When I returned, Emma was back on the couch, but she'd shifted to one end, leaving space for me beside her. I sat down closer than before, and she immediately curled up against my side. It felt natural, like we'd been doing this for months instead of hours. Tell me about your family, she said. What do you want to know? Everything. Where you grew up, what your parents are like, whether you have siblings. I settled back against the couch cushions, Emma warm against my side. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York. My dad was a high school shop teacher. My mom worked at the library. I have one sister, 2 years older, who's now a nurse in Albany. Is that where you learned woodworking from your dad? Yeah, he had a workshop in our garage, and I started hanging around when I was maybe 8 years old. At first, he just let me sand scraps and organize his tools, but gradually he taught me to use the equipment. What was the first thing you made? A birdhouse, terrible construction, gaps everywhere, painted this awful bright blue, but I was so proud of it. I smiled at the memory. My mom hung it outside the kitchen window, and somehow a family of wrens actually nested in it that spring. See, even your first project was functional. Barely. But yeah, I guess that's when I realized there was something magical about making things with your hands, taking raw materials and turning them into something useful, something beautiful. Emma shifted slightly, getting more comfortable. What did your parents think when you decided to make it your career? They were supportive, but worried. My dad understood the craft side of it, but he'd always seen woodworking as a hobby, not a way to make a living. My mom was concerned about financial stability, especially after I got married. And now they're proud. I think they see that I'm happy, that I'm doing work that matters to me. My mom still worries about money, but she stopped suggesting I get a real job. What about your sister? Katie's great. She's the practical one, always was. When I told her Sarah and I were getting divorced, she said she wasn't surprised. Said she'd never seen two people work so hard to be happy together. Emma was quiet for a moment. That's a perceptive way to put it. Katie's good at seeing things clearly. She was the one who told me I needed to stop apologizing for who I am and find someone who actually likes that person. Smart sister. Yeah, what about your family? Emma sighed. More complicated. My parents are both lawyers, corporate law, very successful, very focused on achievement and appearance. I have one brother who followed in their footsteps, and then there's me, the creative disappointment. They don't support your work. They don't understand it. To them, success is measured in salary and status, and graphic design doesn't rank very high on either scale. They were thrilled when I got engaged to David because he fit their idea of what my life should look like. And when you called off the wedding, my mother didn't speak to me for 3 months. My father kept sending me job listings for positions at law firms, suggesting I could still go to law school if I got serious about my future. I felt a surge of protective anger on her behalf. That must have been hard. It was, but it also clarified things for me. I realized I'd been living my life trying to earn their approval, and it was making me miserable. Are things better now? We're speaking again, which is progress. They still don't understand my choices, but they've stopped actively trying to change my mind. My brother actually hired me to design a logo for his practice last year, which felt like a small victory. What kind of law does he practice? Family law, divorces, custody battles, that sort of thing. He says my logo makes him look more approachable, less intimidating. That's a good thing, right? It's a great thing, and it meant a lot that he trusted me with something that important to him. We talked for another hour, sharing stories about childhood, college, the various jobs and relationships that had shaped us. I learned that Emma had wanted to be an artist when she was young, that she'd studied painting before switching to graphic design for practical reasons. She learned that I'd briefly considered becoming a teacher like my dad, but realized I preferred working with wood to working with teenagers. The conversation flowed easily, each revelation leading naturally to the next. I found myself sharing things I rarely talked about: my fears about financial security, my occasional loneliness, the way I sometimes wondered if I was being selfish by prioritizing my craft over more practical concerns. Do you think it's selfish? Emma asked. Sometimes when I see friends buying houses and starting families while I'm still renting and putting every extra dollar into tools and materials. But you're not hurting anyone by following your passion. I hurt Sarah. You hurt Sarah by trying to be someone you weren't. If you'd been true to yourself from the beginning, she could have made an informed choice about whether that was the life she wanted. This hit me like a revelation. I never thought about it that way. We do people a disservice when we pretend to be different than we are. It doesn't protect them. It just delays the inevitable disappointment. Is that what you were doing with David? Exactly. I was so afraid of being rejected for who I really am that I presented this edited version of myself. But that meant he fell in love with someone who didn't actually exist. And you fell in love with the idea of being the kind of person he could love. Right, which isn't the same as being loved. The insight felt profound, like a piece of wisdom that could reshape how I thought about relationships going forward. So what's the alternative? Being brave enough to show up as yourself from the beginning, risking rejection in exchange for the possibility of real connection. Is that what you're doing now with me? She looked at me directly, her eyes serious. I'm trying to. It's terrifying, but it also feels like the only way forward. What's terrifying about it? You could decide you don't like the real me. You could realize this connection we feel is just novelty or chemistry or the result of a late night and too much coffee. What if I decide I like the real you even more than I already do? Then we figure out how to build something real together. The possibility hung between us, both exciting and daunting. I realized we were talking about more than just attraction now, more than just the spark of new connection. We were talking about the potential for something lasting. Emma? Yeah. I want to try building something real. I don't know what it looks like or how it works, but I want to find out. She smiled, and I saw a relief in her expression. I want to try too, even though it's complicated, even though we both have baggage and trust issues and careers that don't exactly scream stability. Especially because of all that, we know who we are, and we know what doesn't work. Maybe that gives us a better chance of figuring out what does work. I leaned down and kissed her again, softer this time, less urgent, but no less meaningful. When we broke apart, she rested her head on my shoulder. "What time is it?" she asked. I checked my phone. "Almost 3. I should probably head home soon. I have a client meeting at 10, and I need at least a few hours of sleep." The thought of her leaving created an unexpected pang of anxiety, not because I was worried she wouldn't come back, but because I wasn't ready for this conversation to end. "Can I see you again soon?" "I was hoping you'd ask, what are you doing tomorrow night?" "Nothing that can't be rescheduled. There's this little Italian place in my neighborhood that makes incredible pasta. Nothing fancy, but the food is amazing, and it's quiet enough to actually talk." "That sounds perfect. 7? It's a date." We sat in comfortable silence for a few more minutes, both of us reluctant to break the spell of the evening. Finally, Emma stirred. "I really do need to go," she said, "but I don't want to." "I don't want you to either." She sat up, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Jake." "Yeah? Thank you for tonight, for showing me your workshop, for sharing so much of yourself, for making me feel like being myself is enough. Thank you for staying, for waiting for the quiet." She smiled. "Best decision I've made in a long time." I walked her to the door, where she gathered her jacket and purse. The simple domestic gesture felt significant, like a preview of a future I could imagine wanting. "I'll text you the restaurant address," she said. "I'll be there." She kissed me once more, quick and soft, then headed for the stairs. I watched until she disappeared around the landing, then closed the door and leaned against it. The apartment felt different with her gone, not empty exactly, but expectant, like it was waiting for her to come back. I realized I felt the same way. I cleaned up the coffee mugs and water glasses, straightened the living room, went through the familiar motions of ending an evening, but my mind was replaying the conversation, the moments of recognition and connection, the way she looked at my workshop like she understood what it meant to me. In my bedroom, getting ready for what was left of the night, I caught myself smiling. Not the polite smile I wore at parties or client meetings, but something genuine and unguarded. When was the last time I'd felt this kind of anticipation about seeing someone again? I thought about what Emma had said about her grandmother's advice, that protection and connection are opposites. For years, I'd been protecting myself from the possibility of another failed relationship by keeping people at arm's length. But protection hadn't made me happy. It had just made me safe. Maybe it was time to choose connection over safety. Maybe it was time to risk being hurt in exchange for the possibility of being truly seen. As I finally settled into bed, I realized that, regardless of what happened next, something had already changed. The conversation with Emma had reminded me of who I was beneath all the caution and self-doubt. Someone who valued authenticity over convenience, who believed in taking time to do things right, who found meaning in creating beauty with his hands. Someone worth knowing, maybe even worth loving. I fell asleep thinking about tomorrow night, about pasta and conversation and the continuation of something that felt like it could be important, something that felt like it could be real. The last thing I remembered before sleep was the sound of her voice saying she'd been waiting for the quiet, and the recognition that I'd been waiting too, not just for quiet, but for someone who understood that the best conversations happen in the spaces between words, when two people are brave enough to show up as themselves and see what happens next. The story of Jake and Emma offers a profound life lesson. True connection flourishes in the quiet moments when we dare to be our authentic selves, embracing vulnerability over the safety of pretense. Emma's decision to stay but after the party, confessing she'd been waiting for the quiet, opened the door to a conversation that transcended small talk, revealing shared passions, past scars, and unspoken dreams. Jake's willingness to share his workshop, a sanctuary of his true self, and to hear him their mutual courage to voice fears of rejection in past failures forged a bond rooted in recognition and trust. This narrative reminds us that life's most meaningful relationships often begin unexpectedly, in moments of stillness, when we stop performing and allow ourselves to be seen, flaws, dreams, and all. It's a call to seek the quiet spaces where honesty thrives, to risk the discomfort of vulnerability for the chance at something real. Their story stirs the heart, evoking our own longing for connections that feel like coming home, urging us to let go of the curated versions of ourselves and embrace the beauty of our imperfections. Have you ever found a deep connection in an unexpected moment of quiet? What's a time you chose vulnerability over safety and discovered something extraordinary? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience could inspire someone to seek their own authentic connection. If Jake and Emma's journey touched you, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more heartfelt tales of courage and intimacy. Join our community of dreamers who believe in the power of genuine moments. Your support keeps these stories alive. Let's build a space where authenticity thrives.